Alrighty. Good morning, everyone. I wanted to introduce Hannah and Evan from Blue Jay Media. They're going to be videotaping today, so everyone who registers will be emailed a link to the video. My name is Susan Greco, and I am a senior downsizing project manager, also known as your easy button to downsizing, and a certified senior housing professional, which gives me the skills to specialize in working with the unique needs of seniors. Total Senior Solutions is a system for working with seniors and their families as their lifestyle and housing needs change. It can be 12 to 18 months of preparation before moving, and I can guide you through the entire process. So why are we here? Total Senior Solutions series is to educate people about the legal, financial, housing, medical, and other general issues and topics of importance. We will not try to sell you anything. We challenge you to ask yourself, who will be tasked in making the decisions for you if you are no longer able to do so yourself? And will you agree with the decisions they make? I'm the moderator for Total Senior Solutions series, and I'm excited you're here today. I wanted to thank my educational partners that are in the back of the room, and if you haven't met them yet, if you could please take a moment at the end and find out what they do. As you know, today's topic is the truth about avoiding dementia, and we'll end 11:30 sharply unless we run out of questions before that, and then we'll end sooner. Lastly, the panelists and the educational partners will be in the back of the room after we're finished. If you have any questions that is more personal that you want answered, then you can ask at that time. So let's get started. So first I want to thank my panelists for coming today. And if you could please introduce yourself and let everyone know who you are and what you do.
Good morning, I'm Ellen Platt with the Option Group. We do private case management and advocacy. So we work with families that are trying to navigate longevity, whatever that looks like. If they want to stay at home, we can bring the care scenario into the home, or if they want to find a facility or community where they can transfer to, we can help with that process. So we do medical care coordination and help keep people safe and help them, guide them with decisions as they age.
Hi, I'm Nicole Gorski. I am with the Alzheimer's Association, and we are here as a resource for anyone who receives a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. We're also here as a resource for anyone who wants to learn more about what we know about preventing cognitive decline.
Hi everybody, my name is Sam Williams. I'm the Executive Director at Brightview of Catonsville, just on the other side of the county here. So we run a memory care and traditional assisted living neighborhood, and we also like to be a resource for people that are living with Alzheimer's and dementia, and being able to connect them with the right people as well.
Great, so let's first define what we're talking about today. There seems to be a lot of confusion about dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Often those labels are used synonymously. Clarify for us the definition of dementia and share the prevalence of various types.
So I'll take that one. Alzheimer's disease is one form of dementia. Dementia is the umbrella term for any sort of cognitive impairment, things that impact your judgment and cognitive capabilities. So Alzheimer's is one form and the most common form of dementia. It accounts for about 70% of dementia diagnosis. There are also a number of other types of dementia that you may have heard of before: frontotemporal, Lewy body, vascular dementia, which make up the other 30%, as well as many others, Parkinson's related, etc. And there's also, people can also have mixed dementia. So they can have one form of dementia, more than one form of dementia at a time.
Perfect. How long might someone live with dementia?
As working with people throughout the continuum of their life, we have seen people with young onset, maybe in their 30s, 40s, and for the extreme where they have been diagnosed with dementia, and it's a very different trajectory than somebody who's diagnosed later in life. But often we work with people who will do cognitive screenings, and people think you either are normal or you have dementia, and there's this wide range in between that can last 10 years. Even before somebody gets a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment. And that's when you start seeing a decline in whether it's hygiene, their ability to do executive functioning like planning ahead, maintaining a calendar. You start seeing some of those red flags popping up. And that can happen for many years before there's even an actual diagnosis. Can I add to that?
Yeah, also, I think it really depends on the type of dementia. So the progression is going to look very different depending on what type of dementia the person is living with. So Alzheimer's tends to be a more slow, steady decline over time, whereas something like vascular dementia, you may see kind of plateaus and sharp declines depending on kind of what else is going on in the disease process. So it's just being aware of the type of dementia, and I always tell people they have tons of books on this, but every person is different and every person is individual, so you really have to tailor kind of your solution to that person and what they're going through.
Okay, I think you might have covered some of this, but let me know if there's anything you want to add. Can lifespan differ for different types of dementia?
Yeah, and I think we've already heard, it depends on the type of dementia. It also depends on what coexisting health issues there may be. We find a lot of people who have dementia may also have high blood pressure, or they may have diabetes, different diseases like that, which may eventually actually be the cause of death instead of dying from dementia. But yeah, it can vary by disease type.
What are some of the early symptoms that might indicate a need for evaluation?
Yeah. So you guys know your loved ones best. So subtle changes in personality, it's not always just short-term memory. That's the most common that you will see. But sometimes you'll see changes in their judgment, changes in their hygiene, their ability to manage their medications. And oftentimes it's more of they forget something, but they can't remember it later, whereas you and I can kind of retrace our steps and come to that, and we might remember the name later. Their hygiene and how they dress, getting lost or not coming back to their home. So there's a whole number of different symptoms, and of course you want to be able to rule out something medically that may be causing an acute issue, and I know we'll talk more about that later, but those are kind of some of the major start signs.
As I say, I think the other piece is really, we talk often about when memory issues impact daily life, when they are unable to function in their daily life because of cognitive issues, that's a serious red flag. And so we have 10 warning signs on our website. I have some information with me. Those warning signs can help identify what's normal aging and what is something that is an area of concern that you may want to speak to a physician.
What we see when we're working with people in the home, we often see, you've probably heard about activities of daily living, things like bathing and dressing and toileting, but there's also instrumental activities of daily living, and those are things like keeping a calendar, managing your medications, handling your finances, things that involve planning and forethought and getting to the grocery store and planning meals and things like that. And we often see those things go first because cognitively they're unable to think ahead multi-steps like that. And then we start seeing things like the activities of daily living. But some of the clues, they're missing appointments, you see dents in the car, they get lost when they're driving in a very familiar area. You might see rotting food in the refrigerator. So there's all kinds of warning signs that we want to take a look at. And then you start thinking, is this because of that organization piece that's they're starting to lose?
How does the evaluation process usually unfold? What can the caregiver and the person being evaluated expect?
So depending on the setting the person is living in. So oftentimes the first line of defense is talking to the primary care doctor. Usually it's somebody that has known the person and worked with them over a number of years, so they are able to kind of see what those changes are. From there, they may recommend going to neurology to kind of see if there is more going on in the brain. They may do some imaging. But oftentimes in my setting, in the community setting, we work with geri psychology. So we may have social workers, we may have psychiatrists who will come in and help manage the symptoms, because of course we know there is not a cure for Alzheimer's and dementia, you more manage the symptoms. So we tend to work with them to get an evaluation and get a baseline of what the person's capabilities are, and we try and meet them where they're at, provide the support so they can maintain their independence for as long as possible, provide them with stimulation throughout the day so they can continue to maintain in their current setting, whether that's at home or in the community.
Some of the things that we recommend is obviously starting with the primary care physician, but we do want to rule out medical possibilities before we say it's dementia. So it could be a vitamin deficiency, it could be a thyroid issue, it could be polypharmacy, just medications interacting negatively which create problems. So we want to rule out that stuff, often have some imaging where, PET scan, you could probably talk a lot about that. And just looking at other possible sources which are often reversible. And we want to rule those out first before we go to that diagnosis of dementia. And then there could be some cognitive screening and cognitive testing that we will do that's a more in-depth to kind of figure out what areas of the brain are impacted, how's it affecting their ability to function, and what kinds of interventions can we do to either slow the decline or compensate for it.
And the only other thing I would add is the fact that if you see changes in a loved one, do something. Because the piece that we are fighting against and making progress against is so many people consider cognitive impairment a general fact of aging. Now, yes, there is cognitive loss at some point as we age, but do not assume that something is inevitable. Be proactive about your health. Talk to your physician and ask the questions, because that is the piece we don't want people just resigning themselves to something I have to live with.
What are some of the most common emotions and/or challenges that come up for those facing a diagnosis of dementia?
Let's take that.
I think number one is going to be denial, and that's both on the individual and sometimes with members of the family, especially I see it a lot in the spousal relationships more often than I see it in the children-adult or children-parent relationships. There's also a lot of fear associated with it, and then a lot of kind of digging your heels in and saying, I don't want to because I don't believe it's happening. So a lot of times that's coming up, so providing that support and knowing that, hey, we want to assist you, we still want you to live a fully engaged life, but we just want to add the supports in so that you're able to manage independently as much as possible.
We see a lot of emotional lability, so it could be good days, bad days, very emotional, very upset, resistant to assistance, and then other days maybe it's more lucid and they're being pragmatic and they're thinking, I do need help to kind of get me through this. So you see a lot of that, and you'll see more good days and bad days. You'll be seeing that zigzag of emotion throughout, and then as things decline, often you'll see more of the bad days where they're not keeping it together. And they probably know that, and it makes it even more difficult because it's hard for them to process it and understand it and fully integrate that into what the new normal is going to look like.
And anger is one that we quite often, our helpline is available 24/7, 365 days a year, and that is quite often the primary thing when someone receives a diagnosis, both on the family end and on the individual end. There is a lot of anger initially with the diagnosis and the resistance, and so we really try and help work with people to acknowledge and appreciate those feelings, and then help to redirect where they can start making plans for what the future's going to hold.
Because the symptoms progress from mild cognitive impairment to moderate and then to severe in no certain time frame, what should people be sure to address early in the disease process?
So I always say, and I know everybody has kind of echoed this, is the proactive approach is the best approach. So the sooner you start talking about kind of what your needs are and what your wishes are, there is a great pamphlet online called 5 Wishes, where you just talk about what do you want your life to look like if you can't make the decisions. And you make it known with your family what your wishes are. Do you want to have medications? Do you want to be kept on a ventilator? Do you want to be in a community, or do you want to stay at home? And having that conversation so your family knows exactly what it is that you want. I think looking at living arrangements and setting something up prior to the disease progression is really, really important, because people with Alzheimer's and dementia thrive on routine and habit, and they can learn, right? They can still have these habits. So getting them set up with the supports that are going to be comfortable, so that by the time they do progress to moderate or severe, they're in that familiar setting with people that they know they can trust. And really trying to kind of have those positive experiences so you can build that relationship as the disease continues to progress.
It's also really important to make sure we're getting our legal documents into place, power of attorney, who is going to be making the decisions for you in terms of finances or medical decisions. You want it to be somebody that you can trust, but you need to do that before you're no longer able to sign paperwork. And a lot of people avoid those uncomfortable conversations, and it's really great to be able to do that ahead of time. Another thing is we want to build on their strengths. So the strengths that they have, the things that have remained intact, the things that make them happy. We want to find the moments of joy and have them still participate in the family life. You know, if they're good at, you know, they used to like cooking, maybe they can't organize the whole meal, but they can help stir stuff in a bowl. Like getting them involved as much as you can, keeping them engaged as much as you can, and really validating their fears and their feelings, because a lot of times they're upset and just, or maybe they forget that their spouse has been gone for 10 years, and you don't want to argue with them and remind them that their spouse has passed so that they can re-grieve all over again. We really want to validate their feelings, maybe distract them at times where they're going back in time, and just helping them know that they are supported and you're here for them and you're going to help them. The other thing that often gets overlooked is the caregiver. We need to make sure that the caregiver has respite and supports as well, so that they can be their best when they're trying to take care of their loved one with dementia.
The only thing I would add is the importance of that pre-planning on documents, because when somebody is no longer able to make their own decision, it becomes an incredibly arduous legal and financial burden, because guardianship has to be assigned. Everything has to go through the courts, and some of the most heart-wrenching calls we get from people to the helpline are people who did not pre-plan and now are trying to figure out how to access mom's money to get care for her. And the process is going to take 3 times as long and cost 3 times as much and have that much more of an emotional impact. So it is so important, not just with dementia, but any disease, to have things planned as well as you can in the future. I mean, in the present for the future.
What advice do you have for the caregivers when people are no longer able to participate fully in the decision-making process?
Have patience.
Yeah, I think you bring them into as much as you can reasonably bring them into. You know, if you're talking living arrangements and you know you physically can't care for somebody in the home, obviously that's not a conversation you want to have with that person, because you know that even though they want to stay there, you would like them to, it's just not always possible. But find those things they can participate in and the things they can make decisions on to make sure that they still feel like they have ownership and control over their own life.
Yeah, patients allowing extra time, not only just to answer questions or come up with their response, but also just the tasks of getting dressed and out the door to the doctor's appointment. Allow extra time so that we're not getting frustrated, we're not getting, you know, feeling the stress of the time pressure, because whatever you're feeling, they're feeling too, and they probably can't put a name on it, and they can't understand it quite so much. So that's when the agitation comes. So patients allowing extra time, and sometimes just having a sense of humor. Just laugh about it with them and help them understand that you're here no matter what.
Is dementia ever reversible?
So we've talked about there are a lot of health conditions that may mirror dementia or some sort of cognitive impairment, and those are reversible, but currently dementia, Alzheimer's in particular, which is the most prevalent, is not reversible. So that's why we are so engaged in trying to get people to consider their cognitive health early and protect as best they can. When you consider that with a well check, it's only been in the last 15 years that a doctor will ask you how you're feeling and ask about the mental piece. They haven't gotten really to the cognitive piece even yet, and that's what we need to talk to doctors about. We need to be our own advocates when we are going in for our annual well check to say, let's do a cognitive baseline. Let's look at where I was last year and where I am now. There's simple things they can do in the office that are not in depth, but they can help mark early changes.
I think Ellen spoke to this beautifully before too, is some of those other medical conditions like a urinary tract infection. Being over-medicated sometimes can prevent symptoms of dementia. Looking at, you know, blood work and making sure there's nothing else acute going on before you're jumping to that diagnosis of dementia.
Is there anything currently thought to prevent or delay the onset of dementia? And what is being marketed to people that is known by the medical profession or science to not work?
I'll start by saying if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And that's, you know, just sort of the adage that you need to look at everything you do with. From the perspective of what we know about preventing cognitive decline, the Alzheimer's Association has just re-released our healthy living under the name of healthy habits for your brain and body. And it's really research-based information about the things that can help to maintain cognitive health. And we encourage people to start them as early and to really pay attention. And I won't go through all of them. You can find that information on our website, alz.org. But there are 3 things I will talk to. Nutrition and fitness kind of go hand in hand, and those are the things that we know. It's good for your heart, it's good for your head, it's good for everything. Socialization. We know COVID really highlighted the fact that isolation kills. And so we encourage people to maintain a social network, to engage with other people, because there's research that shows it does help people maintain their cognitive wellness. And the third, and everyone here will groan when I say it, is sleep. How many people here get nice, solid, good 8 hours of sleep a night? A couple people do, and that's wonderful and that's fantastic. But if I can impart one piece of information, it is to have you, if you have chronic sleep issues, have you speak to your physician. And the reason for this is Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia. Alzheimer's is caused by a buildup of amyloid plaque in the brain. When you get good solid REM sleep, it helps to clear that plaque from your brain. No sleep, plaque buildup, the outcome's not as good. So that would be my primary thing. And as far as supplements and things like that, again, if they sound too good to be true, they may be. Talk to your physician about what they recommend. Okay.
Great job.
What local resources do you recommend people, caregivers and patients access so they have support and current information?
I'll start that by just saying our 800 number is available. We encourage anyone who receives a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or another form of dementia for their loved one to please reach out to us. That line is available 24/7, 365. If you call with a question regarding dementia, regarding the disease itself, you will be connected to a master's level social worker who can help walk you through that question, provide some information, and then the key to this is you are then referred, your call will be referred to a local office. So if you have a loved one who is not in this area but you are looking for resources, they can connect you to a local resource in their area. So that for many people we say is the first step in the process. It will connect you with our resources, which we have support groups, we have early stage engagement activities, we have education, and then these ladies can share other resources with you.
I would have said, go to the Alzheimer's Association. They have an amazing wealth of information and caring people who can help educate you, and that's one of the biggest things that you can do. Is be proactive, know what your options are, explore care management or community resources, or even visit places like Brightview that are able to provide extra support services for those with dementia. The Alzheimer's Association has a list of groups that you can go to, either as a caregiver or, again, with your spouse that has a diagnosis. We have groups at our office in Hunt Valley. We're at Memory Cafe, which is more of a social group for a caregiver and the diagnosed spouse or significant other. There's young onset programs where the person with the diagnosis can be around other people kind of starting that journey too and have their own support group, where the spouse can have their support group at the same time. So you come there, you have some time together to facilitated by someone, social worker or somebody at the Alzheimer's Association, and then they split off into groups where they're with their peers. And it's a great way for people to get information, to find support, and get other resources out in the community where that's going to support them. And as you know, dementia is progressive. Alzheimer's is progressive. It's not going to get better. We hope to be able to slow the decline, but you know that you need to start thinking a step ahead or a couple of steps ahead to know what your options are. What happens if you as the caregiver find yourself in an emergency situation where you have to have surgery yourself? What's the plan? What's the plan? Or if the person has a diagnosis and they could maybe be left alone for a little bit of time while you run to the grocery store, what happens if something happens on your way? Do they know that you are the caregiver, that they need to go find this person with dementia because now you're in the hospital? So you've got to think ahead. There's different ways to be able, you can have a medical bracelet to say, I'm caring for somebody with dementia. So just think ahead because it's going to get progressive. You need to make sure that you get the support as a caregiver, that maybe you have professional people coming in to become familiar with them and they can start to connect and bond, while cognitively they have more flexibility to learn other people and new people and not be so resistant. So it's everything you try is not going to work the first time. You might need to try several times, but it's really important to try and set up supports for you and your loved one to be able to grow with the care as they start to need more and more.
Yeah, I mean, my first go-to is always Alzheimer's Association. the Brightview as a whole, this is not unique to just my community, keeps what we call a circle of support. So in addition to the Alzheimer's Association and the option group, which the option group and geriatric case managers are one of the referrals we tend to make very often, because they can just help kind of see that big picture and look beyond just what's right in front of you. But we try and make sure that we have support groups available. We want to be a resource to our local community, so we try and make sure that we're presenting educational series. In fact, we are working with the Alzheimer's Association to do an educational series through the end of this year. We're working with another group, Pareto Young Care Management, to do some other educational series about, you know, how do you plan for summer? How do you deal with the holidays when you're a caregiver or you're working with somebody with Alzheimer's and dementia? So we want to offer those resources. So coming to any of the communities, again, not just mine, if there is a local Brightview, they tend to have different resources available based on your geographic location.
As far as living arrangements, as the disease progresses, what should people evaluate when it comes to memory care communities? What makes one place better than another?
So this is a soft spot for me. I've been working with people with Alzheimer's and dementia since 2011. I started in college. I was the memory care director at my community for 5 years before I moved into this role. So I think when you're looking at living arrangements and you're looking at what decision to make, you have to think not only about the person, but about your capabilities. And again, we've talked a lot about how this disease is progressive, and it's going to continue to get worse over time. So setting yourself up early to kind of know what is the plan. If you're going to be bringing in-home help, that takes a lot of labor to make sure that, you know, you have people you can trust that can come in and kind of doing your due diligence there. Same thing with any community that you're going to. I recommend going to the community. You don't always have to schedule a visit. Pop in and see what it's like without them expecting you there. Look at the tenure of the team that's there too. That's going to make a very big difference on the day-to-day care. And honestly, go with your feeling when you walk into a place. A lot of times you're going to have a gut feeling on whether this is going to be the right place for your loved one or not. And I would say look for people or communities where they are person-centered and they're focused on the individual, not just the disease, right? Because each person is going to be different in how they react, how they progress, and what type of supports are going to work for them.
There are lots of ways to be able to stay well and safe in a home. There's lots of services out there, whether it's private duty or, you know, Meals on Wheels and bringing in this big care scenario. Sometimes it does become a financial decision. It gets very expensive to have 24/7 care. And then maybe it is looking at other options like Brightview or places that have special training with people with dementia, extra engagement activities to keep them busy. There's medical staff 24/7 so that you're not having to have that one-on-one caregiver. So there are different scenarios that both are really good options, but sometimes it becomes a financial thing. So it's just understanding what's really important. I mean, I had a client that just passed at 102 and she needed 24/7 care and she lived in her home exactly the way she wanted to be, but she had the finances to support that. So it really becomes a financial decision and what's important for that person as well as the family and what do they need. When you start seeing behaviors or you start seeing wandering and things like that, you need to take extra steps to make sure that person is safe. And again, I can't stress respite for family members enough. So just figuring out where is that line in the sand for you as a family where this is no longer tenable. Everybody's different, so there's no right or wrong, it's just what's right for your situation. And you know, with care management, we can help you compare and contrast the two options, and then we can help you identify facilities that would have good quality care and take care of somebody that has dementia, that again, we know it's progressive, and that they would be able to provide extra services as the person declines.
Is there anything you would like to add before we open it up to questions?
Take questions.
Okay, I'm going to hand the mic off over to Sherry. So when you have a question, if you could raise your hand and Sherry will bring you the mic since we're recording.
I have a question. I actually had a question and then was asked to do this, so let me ask this first. So I have a very dear friend that is aging, and she and her husband, and he is having cognitive or more, I guess, organizational, like Ellen spoke about, I don't know the proper term, but type of issues. Putting food in the wrong place, very frustrated with driving, not sure where he's going. She's pulled the kids in, right, which are adult children. She has reached out to her doctor, had conversations. Her son has called and had conversations with the doctor. They went to the neurologist, and she feels very helpless and hopeless right now for multiple reasons. One, the neurologist, she felt as though they didn't ask, so there is no diagnosis, right? It's very early on. But she's trying to manage that herself. Children are out of state. There's no diagnosis for help. And things that she experienced frustration were things such as when she went to the neurologist didn't really speak with her per se, and the tests that, this is, what I'm hearing secondhand, of course, but that tests that were done were tests that, of course, he could pass because it's rote memory type things, but like the steps of a process, can you recite, things of that nature. I feel like that she's in a place of a no man's land, right? Like you're not to the place where you have a diagnosis that you can get, quote, the help that you need. But I love the idea of building on their strengths. That was awesome. There were several other things you mentioned that I think would be helpful. But what would you recommend for someone like that that's just really, that is the care provider right now and doesn't have that title, so to speak?
I mean, number one, I'd have her call our 800 number because she can talk to a social worker who can help, maybe able to help connect her with a different neurologist, because it sounds like, and we know there's a range of doctors in any field, and we do know that younger doctors are more attuned to looking at cognitive issues than some more seasoned professionals. Let's put it that way. So there is a challenge with that quite often, that it's just, they're not used to diagnosing dementia. They diagnose a lot of other things, but dementia is still one of those things that's been kind of pushed to the back, kept in a closet, and so a different neurologist may be a recommendation. They can also help her determine if there are some resources locally that she can connect to. She can connect to a support group, whether she has a diagnosis or not. If she's got challenges with him cognitively, then she may need to, and it may not be a support group he attends with her at this point, but it's an opportunity for her. We do also have, and I did not mention this previously, we do have online and telephone support groups. And that has been very helpful for people. We have an online caregivers community, and it's been a really helpful resource, really ramped up during COVID because people couldn't get together. But it's also been a resource for a lot of people who are in the position that your friend is in, where they may not have a diagnosis yet, but they're definitely seeing the signs, and they are at a loss for resources, and maybe something she can connect with.
And is that found on the
Yes, that's,
website?
yes,
ALZ.org?
I'll connect. I can send you the link to it
that's
directly.
Thank you.
And it can be found on you would go to alz.org and just search online caregiving, and they can connect you on that. But that's a really important resource, I think, a lot of times for people who have others who are resistant. The other piece they can do is do a care consultation call with the entire family. They can do it as a Zoom call so that you get the adult children in with her, so that the adult children recognize the challenges she's facing, and it's coming from a third party, which quite often is what needs to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone
Else have questions?
You mentioned that there's often denial, which I saw in my own family with my mom, my brothers not wanting to see what I saw. Oh, you're imagining it. But So there's a lot of denial and in the individual. Can you say something about the individual's awareness of the loss of cognitive function? Because I saw that in my mom, that she was just always she was a real estate agent and a people person, and she had some awareness, and I think she had some awareness before my siblings did, and was kind of defensive prophylactically, if that makes sense.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we see that all the time when people are starting to decline, especially people who are social and active and verbally intact. They can fake it really well. They, and they go to their primary care appointment, how are you doing? I'm fine, I'm good. They can talk about all kinds of things. But if the doctor had the ability to spend time with your mom and see that she's repeating the same things, or she, starts going down a rabbit hole every time, doctors don't necessarily see that, especially the primary care. They're busy looking at medication and chronic health conditions, and they have 15 minutes to get you through because the next appointment is coming. A lot of times, they're not doing any kind of cognitive screening, and so somebody, especially who's verbally intact, is able to fake it much longer than somebody who's losing their word-finding ability and struggling with making sentences, and that seems to be noticed a little bit easier. So one of the big things I could say is build your care team. Build the team around you as the caregiver. You can't do everything. You need a great primary care physician who's going to be collaborative with you. You need a good neurologist and maybe a second opinion if you're not getting the answers you need. You as a caregiver have to be the advocate for them. And if you think something's wrong, something probably is, because as Samantha said, you know that person better than probably anybody else. So getting the diagnosis, getting them to the specialist, creating the care team, whether it's respite, it's a private caregiver who can come in and sit with them for a while where you can take care of your own medical needs, which is really important. Or even just a friend, a family friend who knows them well, where maybe they're not going to be as offensive because this is somebody that's been in my life all along and we've always gone to play golf together. Something like that. So you figure out what works, create that care team, educate yourself as a family on what is available and what does it cost and what do we think is going to be the best. And sometimes it's a matter of getting through those family dynamics because the family may not be agreeing on what the best next step is. So it's having some education for everybody so we're starting at the same level. The focus is on the person that needs the care.
Yeah, I love that, create your care team. That's a really well thought out way to word that. Just get a second opinion if you need it, but have that care team in place. That's a great idea.
I was going to say, the only other thing that I would add is capacity and lucidity itself are very fluid, right? There's some times of the day where they're going to be more with it and more on top of it. So if your brothers are only visiting her in the mornings and right when she wakes up and she's fresh and ready for the day, they're not going to see the same thing you might see in the evenings. So just thinking about that, and people have their habits. So if somebody was always a night owl, they might not have the traditional sundowning. That may show up on a different time of day. So just keeping that in mind as well. And also when you have those moments of lucidity and capacity, to capitalize on them and create those moments where they still can provide choice and still feel involved in the decision making too.
Awesome. You have a question?
Yes. Hi. My mom has had a decline, and she's at the point where she's having a hard time getting her words out. Can that be reversed at all?
So there's different strategies to help kind of maintain more than reversal. So a lot of times in the community setting, we'll bring in a speech therapist who can help work with kind of some of the aphasia and the word finding. And there's different kind of exercises they can do to help exercise that. I wouldn't say it's reversible, but we can certainly help delay.
No, I'm totally overwhelmed. My mom lives on her own with my brother. My brother works in the evenings and I work during the day. And since this onset, she has lost all of her friends pretty much. So she's alone a lot. And it's overwhelming to me, I don't know. And plus she has many medical issues and lots of doctors in a week. And it's very hard for me, but I need to be there. You know, to take her, I need to be there because I need to hear what the diagnosis is or, you know, what to do for her. So I don't know who of you to call to help, because I really wouldn't know where to start, but I'm totally overwhelmed with it.
I think talking to someone like Ellen is a great place to start, and of course calling the Alzheimer's Association. You know, I don't want to like tout community living, but there's socialization built in. We have a lot of providers that come into the community, so you're not having to worry about going to the doctor's appointments.
Yeah.
We have our nurses on staff that's going to be able to report back to you. And I do know through the services with the option group, there's very similar supports if she wanted to stay in the home as well.
Okay, yeah.
Let Ellen speak to that a little more.
Yeah, we often look at the whole picture, and what is the goal here, and what do we need? What is the family able to do? What are they not able to do? We want to look first at the safety issues. Are they safe? Do they have everything that they need? But then short term, what do we need to start thinking about? And long term, what do we really need to start planning on? And a lot of it is this is the time to really educate yourself and your brother and your family about what's going on. A trick that I use, not a trick, but take your mom to a Brightview for lunch or an activity. Go there, see what it's like, sit with people, get her to interact with people there and kind of like test drive it. Some people might try a respite stay, which is where she could go there for 30 days. So say you need to go out of town for a family wedding or your brother has surgery, whatever it is, she could go temporarily without signing up forever to a Brightview or an assisted living where she can live there as if she lived there. She can be involved in the activities, and they're great with scooping her up in the activity and
That's
getting
a
her
great
involved
idea.
with other people.
Yeah.
She's eating the meals. She's on a routine. She finds that life is so much easier because I'm not having to think about breakfast, lunch, and dinner and how am I even going to get it on my plate.
Yeah.
It's kind of just happens around her, and then she gets scooped up in the fun stuff. And so that might be a way to try it out.
You're checked up on the list here, but that sounds great.
I think the other thing to kind of piggyback on that is in those settings, we're going to try and set her with people that are going to be on her level and that are like her, kind of in the same stage of the process. So
Yeah.
she's not going to feel alone. She's not going to feel embarrassed. A lot of times you mentioned her friends kind of withdrawal. That might be on her part too, because
It
she's
is.
recognizing that she's having those issues and she's
Yes.
embarrassed and she doesn't want to put herself out there.
That's true.
In those types of settings, she's with people that are going to be on her level, and it's not going to feel so overwhelming. And she's going to have that support for the activities, the engagement, and that sort of thing as well.
Sounds great, yep.
Anybody else?
Any other questions? Thank you. This has been amazing because I'm dealing with this issue with my mom. And in regards to your comment, please know you are not alone at all. I'm very much in your same position where I'm the sole caregiver of my mom who is declining. She's still living independently and spends 100% of her day alone unless I go take her to doctor's appointments or take her out.
Yeah.
And it's a daunting burden. Burden isn't the right word. It's a daunting
Task.
task.
Yeah.
I didn't mean burden,
Yeah.
but it's overwhelming, really overwhelming. And for me, this has been amazing because I definitely would like to reach out actually to all three of you for different reasons because I think there's value in talking with you about my situation with my mom, and I have other people that I know that are in similar situations, but I really would like to connect with a support group myself, and Kelly would be helpful for you as well. Thank you.
I will say, I can't say enough about support groups, and quite often we have people sort of rail against them and, I don't want to go. But I have seen time and again Support groups create support networks. So it is not just once a week or once a month going somewhere and meeting with people. You end up with a community who is in the same position as you. It becomes a resource outside of your monthly meeting time. And that is so critically important for everyone. And you know, the last thing we want to see is a person with dementia outlive their caregiver, and we've seen it happen far too often because caregivers do not focus on themselves. I think we're seeing a pendulum shift on that, I hope, but that is part of why so much of what we do as an organization is really focused on ensuring that the caregiver has the resource they need to be able to do what they need to do, and to do it in a way that keeps them healthy and well.
We're focusing here a lot on the caregiver who kind of drives the bus of management. And I think I wasn't clear about my earlier question. My question, and maybe my mom wasn't a good example to use. I'm thinking of a first cousin who I grew up with. What do you suggest or have thoughts on someone who has the awareness, not that they can't function, this person functions very well, lives independently, but she has an awareness of her cognitive decline. She has an awareness of her word finding. She will be talking about something totally lucid and mean to refer to somebody's house, and she'll say shoe, and then she catches herself. Or she's a very good cook. She recently made crab cakes. A friend of hers brought her some really good crab meat, and she made these crab cakes she's been making for years. And she said, "You won't believe what I did." She said they were horrible, and I couldn't figure out why. She forgot to put a main ingredient, the mayonnaise. And she's had a lot of episodes like that. Now, she has a hearing deficit, and I've been telling her for years she needs to wear hearing aids because I know that there is a real connection between hearing loss and dementia and missing. And anyway, she pays a lot of money for hearing aids, and then she doesn't wear them. So I beat that horse to death. But I didn't know if you had any other thoughts about, because she will talk to me. She'll say, "Oh, you know what I did this time?" Or "I was going somewhere that I've gone 25 times and wasn't sure where she was." So I didn't know.
So I think to that, and I'll let the other ladies jump in as well, but I think to that, part of it is the reassurance when she brings that awareness up that she has a disease. It is part of the disease, and that's one of the pieces that I think the old stigma was. It was a defect when someone had senility, and so really reassuring people this is a disease. You do not have control over a disease. You are aware of this disease, and we will walk the journey, the disease journey with you, because quite often when they're showing awareness and anger and agitation, it is fear and the fear of being left behind.
But what are your thoughts about what she can do? She's very functional, and so this is very early. It's not that she can't manage.
So a lot of it is
there something she can do to help herself?
Using techniques, Ellen talked about some of the techniques. If she's aware of those limitations, using lists, using Post-its, doing some of these activities, working with, speech therapists can help with that word recall. They can help develop techniques to work on that word recall. So there are some things, a lot of it really is shoring up what she already knows and finding those techniques. And there are things on our website about different ways to help manage mild cognitive impairment, which kind of sounds where she is, and that's a precursor. So it's using techniques and strategies to help improve memory capacity and memory ability. Cues and triggers like notes, like Post-its, like alarms on watches, things like that can help people keep on those schedules, can help people remember how to do things.
I would also just add, if she has the awareness of, hey, I'm struggling or I'm slipping, you as a friend can encourage her to go seek kind of more of cognitive evaluation, see the neurologist, talk about diet, exercise, all those things that can help delay it. But you're bringing her into the conversation and she's having that control to be able to seek that feedback. So encouraging her to do that, to say, hey, this could be nothing, could just be MCI, mild cognitive impairment, and maybe it'll never progress beyond that. It doesn't always, right? Or you can go and be proactive and make sure that if it does progress, you're setting yourself up for success and to have a say in what your future looks like. That might be how I would approach the conversation.
Along those lines, I would also add, at that point where they have that awareness, they're probably having a pretty good day because they're understanding it. And that might be the entree to having some of those conversations. Maybe if we have not done our legal documents yet, that might be a conversation we want to have and help them understand that we're here, we're going to support you, but we want you to make the decision, and this is the time to do it while you can.
Well, see, she has enough awareness, she's done all that. She says, I better do it before, no, she's really,
And that's great.
she's as
Yeah.
functional as probably everybody here. It's like she intermittently has these, guess what I did?
Yeah.
So she, I didn't know if there was something, I mean, I do think she should wear her hearing aids.
I will second that 100%.
I've even given her journal articles that are easy to
Yes.
read, that link it so clearly. And
Exactly.
She just, and she has those nice ones that you can't even see.
And you can lead a horse to water. But yes, hearing is definitely an issue with cognitive issues, and we tell anybody, much like looking at UTIs or different things like that, get your hearing tested. If you're starting to have cognitive, get your hearing tested, because quite often a pair of hearing aids will turn things around.
It's amazing. I know that.
I do want to thank everybody for coming today, and these are free, and they're always going to be on the second Tuesday of every month, the same time, and there is going to be a different topic every single month. June's topic is called The Truth About Aging in Place. So if you know anybody that would be interested, please let me know. I'd love to put them on my email list. And yeah, thank you very, very much. This was wonderful.